Hello, chat. How are you doing today? Today we're going to go over some more transmedicalism stuff. I swear to God, we're turning into a transmedicalism channel. That is not the intention. While, obviously, I do think transmedicalism and trans rights are an important topic, and I do believe that I will always be in favor of trans rights and defend trans rights when they come up. But I don't necessarily want that to be the entire thing this channel is about. But we are in kind of an arc right now. I think part of it is because I picked a couple of topics that ended up intersecting with transmedicalism in ways that I didn't expect. And I also like to be really thorough with things. I don't like to leave any stone unturned, especially because we're preparing for a debate. And in the interest of that preparation, just like last stream, we're going to be going over some more stuff about transmedicalism. We've got our research document from last time. Well, not last time. We went over this a few streams ago. And I'm not going to hash it out again. We've been over it all. But I've got a little checklist here of things that we can look into that I've added since last time. Because I've been doing more research, and we can always improve things. I'd like to flesh some of this out. So this is our itinerary for today. We were asked to look into Hungary, Orban's regime. We're going to look into cis people's access to HRT and differences in barriers. We're going to look into the Gender Dysphoria Alliance. That's a transmedicalist organization. And we're going to look into Trev Trans Educational Voices, which is another transmedical organization. Those are really hard to find. I tried Googling transmed orgs, and just Googling that doesn't really get you anything. So I only found out about these through a Jessie Gender video, and I only found that just like through watching every single transmedicalism video that I could find on YouTube. If anybody has any more resources or information about transmed orgs, or about anything else that would be like super interesting or relevant to look through, definitely leave a comment below, or say something in chat if you're live. Okay, next we're going to look into Republicans, whether or not they accept trans people who pass versus don't pass. I'm not convinced such statistics exist, but we're just going to kind of look into anything related to that, because that came up in the food shops debate that we listened to yesterday, and I think that might come up again in the future, especially if we talk to food shops. So we'll look into that. Then we've got the Fenway Health Detransition Rate Study, which I found listening to... Hold on. We're going to take a look at a couple of different videos today. We're not going to watch the whole things. We're just going to snipe a couple of clips, although I will be sharing links, obviously. Let's check my history. Who is it? It's by God Damn It Malcolm. It's a trans dude. He does really great debates on transmedicalism. See, I work a day job, and what I do all day at work when I'm not helping customers is walking around the store floor, and I've got little stealth earbuds in, and I'm just listening to audiobooks and debates and video essays and stuff all day. It's like my training arc. Okay, so yeah, that was something that came up in a Goddammit Malcolm debate. So we might look into that. This detransition study. Then we're going to look into the affirmative care model. That's basically what a lot of people call the self-ID model. It's basically a health It's like the modern standard of like how doctors ought to treat trans people. It's like in the guidelines of saying a trans person goes to the doctor and says, I think I might be trans. And the doctor used to do what is basically conversion therapy, which is they would try to talk them out of it and be like, oh, well, maybe you're not trans. Have you tried not being trans? And the new model is to say, okay, well, let's work together. And then they'll like go through the diagnostic process without denying their gender identity. And that's the affirmative care model, which is basically what a lot of people refer to as self-ID, as far as I can understand. We're going to look into that and just kind of look at the history of it and see where it's in effect and stuff like that. We're going to read the W paths, or at least skim through it. We're going to just kind of get a gist of it. We've looked at it before. I think we just want to take a little bit of a closer look. We're going to take a look at the diagnostic criteria for gender dysphoria. That came up in another Goddammit Malcolm debate. And we might skim through that video just to grab the page number. But I might be able to find it without the video. The page number from the DSM-5, which is where the criteria are listed. We may or may not have to check the DSM-5 for this. It may be accessible elsewhere. But it doesn't help to check it doesn't hurt to check multiple places. Another thing that came up in the debate and I think would be useful to check out is the historical and anthropological evidence for a social transition. Because a lot of transmedicalists will try and take the position that being trans is, by definition, like we're accessing the truth of the matter of what it means to be trans has to do with medical transition, which means that trans people as a category are very new, because the first medical transition, I believe, was like in the 1920s, and like with the Hirschfield Institute, I think it's called. I need to look more into that too, but that's not going to be today. That's a whole thing. So yeah, that would kind of invalidate the long history of trans people that I'm sure we know about. So we're going to look into this a little bit. I don't know how deep we can dig in one stream, especially with all this other stuff on our list, but we'll at least take a cursory glance. And then we're going to skim through the Vosh research doc to see if we can just peck anything off of there that might be useful to us. And yeah, that's about it. That's about everything that we want to do today. I think that's a pretty big list of things. We're gonna do something a little bit different. We're gonna put some music on just to chill. What should we listen to? I feel like the Celeste soundtrack is apropos. Let's get that going. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay. Somnio says, seems like it's about time for a refresher on this. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to look into Hungary and Orban's regime. I'm not sure what I'm going to find here or if it's anything that's useful for this, but I wrote it down, so we're doing it. Since his election as Prime Minister in 2010, Orban has led initiatives and laws to hinder the human rights of LGBT plus people, regarding such rights as not compatible with Christian values. In 2020, Orban's government ended legal recognition of transgender people, receiving criticism both in Hungary and abroad. So let's take a look at this. What do we got here? Anti-LGBT policies. In 2020, his government ended legal recognition of transgender people, receiving criticism in both in Hungary and abroad. His party proposed legislations to censor LGBT plus positive content in movies, books, public advertisements, and to severely restrict sex education in forbidding any information We're gonna adjust the volume here. That's probably fine. Forbidding any information thought to encourage gender change or homosexuality. The law has been likened to Russia's restriction on homosexual propaganda. German Chancellor Angela Merkel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen harshly criticized the law. Well, a letter from 16 EU leaders, including Pedro Sanchez and Mario Draghi, warned against the threats against fundamental rights and in particular the principle of non-discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation. Positions came under more scrutiny under the revelation that one of the European deputies of his party had participated in a gay sex party in Brussels. Despite the ongoing COVID-19 restrictions, he was one of the major architects behind the Constitution of Hungary. This new constitution has been criticized by Human Rights Watch for being discriminatory towards LGBT+ community. Okay. I don't know if there's anything here we can use. It does. This was brought up because it was compared to the Florida anti-trans stuff, and it does seem very similar to the Florida anti-trans stuff. Although I don't know if it's going to be super relevant in this debate. Oh, that's another thing we want to look into is we want to get more information about self-ID laws passing. Yeah, we want to get like citations. That's super important. Okay. Cis people access to HRT. Can we find anything about that? Cis people benefit from gender-affirming healthcare. Let's see what we got. And this is not structured at all, by the way. I have no idea what I'm going to find throughout this. There might be a lot of me just sitting in silence and reading. I apologize in advance. I'm just kind of learning. It's a learning stream, you know? Gender-affirming healthcare for trans and non-binary people is being attacked legally and politically in the UK. Somnio, if you're still there, how's the volume on the music? Is it too quiet? We've seen this with Kira Bell's well-funded court case, which almost succeeded in making it so trans kids needed court approval to get puberty blockers. We see it with the fact that the trans healthcare crisis means that a trans person in London going to their GP today for a referral to gender clinic can wait as long as 26 years. Holy shit. Okay, cool, it is good. Going by the current rate of intake, we see it as every time a politician bleats about women having cervixes, a lie that comes as many trans men and non-binary are struggling with access to timely cervical screenings and reproductive health care. Transphobic rhetoric about how gender-affirming surgeries are mutilation and lies about... Yeah, okay. Bothered about gender-affirming healthcare for trans people. A couple years ago, a housemate of mine was prescribed testosterone-blocking medication. PCOS. Doctor said that Spiro would help treat some of the symptoms she was experiencing, like hair growth and on body and face. Prescription literally in hand and picked up the medication. If I'd been let's go back. She left the appointment with prescription literally in hand and picked up the medication from the chemist a few minutes later. After trying Spiro, she realized that she liked the side effects of that even less, so she stopped taking it. And then she asked me if I knew any trans women who might want the meds she had left over. But the vast majority of trans women in the UK can't get Spiro from their GP. If they want to block their testosterone, which many trans women do, they'd start with a GP appointment, which would lead to a referral and a gender clinic, then wait several years before a psychiatric assessment and a clinical diagnosis of gender dysphoria. Then they could be prescribed a testosterone blocker and most likely also the hormone estrogen? Or estrogen. Is that a different thing? Estrogen versus estrogen. Oh, it's the same thing. Okay. This inequality to access, or in access to hormones, is not limited to Spiro. When I wanted to try taking testosterone, I first had to go to my GP for a referral. That meant I spent several years taking NHS gender clinic waiting list. Finally, I had 2 hours long appointments, one with a social worker, one with a clinical psychologist, discussing everything from my childhood to my sex life to my mental health. I received the precious diagnosis of gender dysphoria, which permits me to obtain gender-affirming hormones and surgery. Then finally I was prescribed testosterone gel. If I'd been a cis man, say in my 40s, struggling with a low sex drive, depressed and feeling a bit moody, then I also might have gone to my GP as a first port of call. But that's where the similarity ends. As a cis man, my GP would have ordered a blood test and, if my testosterone levels were low, send me to a specialist, after a wait of weeks rather than years, who could prescribe me testosterone gel. Note, no several years spent waiting, and no need to obtain a clinical diagnosis to prove myself. In both cases, testosterone gel is being used as a gender-affirming treatment, but the way the same medication is prescribed is hugely different. Gender-affirming healthcare, not just for trans people. It's not only hormones that cis and trans people alike use to affirm their genders. Boob jobs, gender-affirming surgery. Hormone replacement for menopausal cis women, gender-affirming healthcare. Hair transplants for balding men, gender-affirming treatment. Viagra, gender-affirming healthcare, definitely. I would and happily will argue that in many cases a cis person who is going to the gym, getting tattoos, shaving their legs, wearing a bra, dyeing their hair, or wearing makeup is acting in a way that for them affirms their gender. However unlikely they may be to recognize that that's what they're doing. But there's no crowd-funded £250,000 court case saying that cis men shouldn't have access to Viagra. Perhaps it would have been money better spent. And that's because when cis people affirm their genders, be it through the clothes they wear, their haircuts, their jewelry, or yes, the surgical operations they undergo to better assert their gender, it's not a big deal. It's commonplace. So commonplace, in fact, that we don't even see it that way. Yet when trans people affirm our genders through the way we dress or haircuts or jewelry or sometimes even medical interventions like taking hormones or having surgery, it's a very big deal to cis people. It is perceived not just as healthcare, like what they have, but trans healthcare, and as such, they feel the need not only to tightly control it, but to argue against it and to make it harder for us to have it. And for those of us who talk publicly about aspects of our own personal medical transitions, they feel it's okay to tell us exactly why they think what we've chosen to do with our bodies is disgusting, in language that would rightly be lambasted if it was aimed at cis people. It's expected that trans people will accept a certain level of abuse if we talk publicly about the gender-affirming healthcare that we're accessing, in a way that a cis woman taking hormonal contraception or a man dyeing his graying hair may be surprised to experience. The answer is not to restrict cis people's access to gender-affirming healthcare, but to make it easier for trans people to get a hold of. Hormones should, as trans civil rights activists have long argued, be available at the GP and sexual health clinics under model of informed consent. That's another thing we want to look up. Model of informed consent. Yeah, we're adding that right next to our affirmative care model. That's a double whammy. In other words, in the same way in which the same hormones are already available to cis people. And why is it that some medication is available at big supermarkets while other medication is not? Codeine and antihistamines at Tesco, but not testosterone. Why? The earlier examples of testosterone and Spiro are not only hormones where we see this health inequality between trans and cis people play out. We see the same thing with estrogen, readily available to cis women as a hormonal contraceptive at their GP, yet extremely hard to get a hold of for trans women, who must go through a specialist gender clinic and a psychiatric assessment to assess the same drug. In fact, most trans healthcare is actually cis healthcare, if you think about it. Very few of the speech... That's true, the hormone blockers were used for, like, decades for cis kids. Very few of the speech and language therapists, laser hair removal specialists, or surgeons constructing penises for trans men originally trained to offer their services to trans people. Their services were for cis people first and then adopted for trans people. And the fact that cis people are happy to have these different forms of healthcare for themselves yet so vehemently against it when trans people want to take it. When trans people want it takes us back to the question, why are cis people so bothered about gender-affirming healthcare for trans and non-binary people? Perhaps it's not the healthcare that they have a problem with after all. Good read. I probably didn't need to read that whole thing. We kind of just got... The thing that we're taking away from this is cis people are able to access what we can call gender-affirming care, the exact same drugs and procedures that trans people can access, without the same barriers, without the gatekeeping. So this is the double standard that we've been running up against again and again in our research. So those are a couple of good case studies. What we want is data. So I wonder if we can find any, like, research on this. I guess... We're going to take this, because this is at least a couple of case studies. And we're going to put this here. We're going to put this in other information. It's graduating from random thoughts to other information. We're going to say cis people can access drugs and procedures that without the barriers that face trans people. And then we'll add our link. And then let's see if we can find any actual data. Probably not. How would we search for that? Maybe... Gender-affirming hormone therapy on psychological outcomes. No, that's not what we want. What about, like, access to estrogen cis? No. Okay, well, I think we've got what we need anyway. we have examples of cis people accessing these drugs and procedures, and that's all we really need, I think, for that, to make that argument. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to look into the Gender Dysphoria Alliance. That's our next step. So, who are these guys? What are they about? Let's see. Inform the conversation about gender dysphoria. Let's turn off dark mode. I can't read that. There we go. Inform the conversation about gender dysphoria. Explain why evidence-based care is so important. Include people who detransition, regret, or desist. Support sex-based rights. Explain why evidence-based care is important. Is there a Who We Are page? Okay. We believe there are different types of GD. Gender divergence? Oh, gender dysphoria. HSTS. What is HSTS? I'm assuming it's not that. Homosexual, transsexual. Okay. I see where we're going. This is like Ray Blanchard shit. Yeah, AGP, autogynephile. Oh boy. I like how they're using the acronyms. Like this is deep in the transmedicalist sauce. ROGD. What is this? Rapid onset gender dysphoria. Isn't this like widely discredited? Peer influence and social contagion. Yeah, this is like literally like the social contagion theory of gender dysphoria. Okay. So we got some social contagion theory, we got autogynephiles, we got homosexual transsexuals, which is like basically like the inverted like trans people are actually just confused gay people. It's very nice. And what's DSD? No, not transport. We're not doing a train stream. We'll do trains rights later. The train arc is next. What is DSD? Differences in sex development? I don't know. The distinctions between these types of gender dysphoria in terms of how we best support people with gender dysphoria. When we individually understand our own gender dysphoria, we have greater agency in our own lives and decision-making. Seeing certain types of GD as taboo or unmentionable only fosters shame, which is unhelpful, both for individuals with GD and those around them. GD is a condition, not a culture, and we all benefit from being able to express culturally diverse ideas and develop our own values. Why evidence-based care is so important. Clinical practices should be based on peer-reviewed evidence, not activism or ideology. Oh, we got that science is above ideology sort of thing here. As if there's no like moral presuppositions. Yeah, it might be something to do with intersex. Somnio, you're right. People's ability to consent to medical interventions is seriously hampered by the absence of proper and up-to-date research and long-term studies. Include people who detransition, support sex-based rights when carrying out our work. Okay, so I don't really care. I don't care too much about what they say they're about. I want to know what they do, and I'm not going to find that on their website. So we got to dig a little bit deeper. So can we find anything in the news? What if we use quotes here? Right, this was mentioned in the this was mentioned in one of the videos that I watched, which is what caused me to write it down. This open letter was signed by Buck Angel, and it was like defending conversion therapy. Transsexuals want to reclaim the narrative on gender dysphoria as a meaningful diagnosis from the radical transgender activists who wish to eradicate it from and other so-called barriers to sex change services. In an open letter to 29 major medical organizations based in the US, a group of transsexuals, a term they prefer, belonging to the Gender Dysphoria Alliance, called for a shift towards evidence-based care and rejection of ideologically and politically driven narratives. As people with gender dysphoria, many of us transgender or detransitioners, we want to clear away the confusion and obfuscation surrounding our condition. The letter reads, for the safety and well-being of all trans and gender dysphoric people, we need our healthcare, especially our mental health care, disentangled from a well-meaning yet misappropriated academic philosophy. The letter explains that... Hold on. I keep forgetting to zoom in. The letter explains that the postmodern philosophy called queer theory... What are they linking to? Okay, that might actually be something real. Which seeks to do away with biological categories based on the belief that they are oppressive and socially constructed, is where the ideological narratives about transgender people... Okay, this is about the letter. I want to actually look at the letter. Here we go. So who is this signed by? Can we look at that? Oh yeah, okay. Oh, that's long. Oh, it's not that long. Yeah, there's Buck Angel. I guess I'm not going to recognize anyone else on here. The debate over transgender healthcare has recently escalated to a fever pitch. Trans activists are engaging in censorious and even coercive tactics to shut down any critical inquiry into the safety and efficacy of immediately medicalizing anyone who presents with gender dysphoria or self-identifies as transgender. We, as members of the transgender community, and others with gender dysphoria, wish to disavow these tactics and request our healthcare be as safe, rigorously researched, and apolitical as every other healthcare field. We feel gender-related healthcare has been polluted by an academic theory that seeks to blur the categories of male and female, gay and straight, cisgender and transgender. Queer theory's aim is a noble one, to shield oppressed people from the forces of their oppression by erasing the lines between the oppressor and the oppressed. However, when theory rather than evidence informs healthcare practices, safety is compromised. It's just such nonsense language. What does that even mean? All research is informed by theory. That's where everything starts. What are you talking about? Queer theory is a postmodern philosophy. Oh my god. It started in academia in the 1990s. What? Okay. And has trickled out into the broader LGBT community over the last decade or so. Queer theory posits that gender is just a performance. Wait. How... When was Gender Trouble written? Okay, it was written in 1990. Okay. So they're saying queer theory, like... Judith Butler is literally the grandmother of queer theory. Like, that's where it begins. I'm not so sure that's true. Maybe they're right. I don't know. I haven't read Judith Butler yet. It's still on my list, honestly. Yeah, it does kind of sound like anti-evolution. I mean, maybe these guys are like young Earth creationists or something. Who fucking knows, right? Like they're working. I know they work with conservative organizations. Oh yeah, we gotta check out the. We're gonna check out the Jesse Gender segment about this org as well. Not the whole video, just like the clip from the video. Okay, queer theory posits that gender is just a performance, that male and female are merely learned behaviors that can be performed as equally as well by either sex. Naturally, trans activists embrace this idea of gender being untethered from biological sex. And despite this view being difficult to translate into law or medicine, activists have been successful in working that understanding of gender into both. Today, most people who have adopted and perpetuate queer theory have no idea what queer theory is. They simply understand it as progressivism, or pejoratively as wokeism. But it is an academic philosophy, a lingual tactic intended to protect the vulnerable that has spread throughout the Western world and ultimately become a state-sanctioned religion. Indeed, in recent years, it has become almost blasphemous to question the often contradictory tenets of queer theory. For example, that sex is both arbitrary and irrelevant, yet sometimes can be incorrectly assigned and requires medical intervention. Okay, I don't know how useful this is. What are we in sum? Let's look at the summary. Activists have created confusion about what trans is by couching it in academic theory that deliberately obscures any definitive categories. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's look at the Jesse Gender segment. Because I want to see what she's referencing. That might help us find more information. It was this here. So we want to look through the transcript. This is a super useful thing you can do, by the way, if you didn't know. If you go in the description of almost any YouTube video, you can scroll down and find the transcript here. Yeah, it is very conspiratorial. It's almost like the... It's borderline cultural Bolshevism. Like that Nazi conspiracy theory that like Marxism is taking over academia. It's like right on the cusp of being that. Which is really, it's a really popular conspiracy. Okay, so yeah, you can like go down into the description of almost any YouTube video and you can find the transcript here, and then you can like literally Control F if you like half remember something somebody's saying from a YouTube video. It's super useful. Okay, so what are we looking for? Alliance. Here we go. Oh, it was right at the beginning, okay. Alright, we're gonna pause the music. Oh, let's turn the volume up.
Letter hosted and signed by the founders of Gender Dysphoria Alliance Canada and Trans Educational Voices.
We're going to look into them too.
Two similarly controversial trans man-run organizations. And again, we'll be talking about why they're controversial in just a bit. But this letter, whoo boy, it's a lot of...
Oh, President Sunday viewers, welcome. Thank you for the raid. Hello. We are doing transmedicalism research, preparing for a possible debate with food shops. We're just going to go back over this again. You can find a video on my channel called Debate with a bunch of question marks. Squid Raid, yeah, Squid Gang. I'm not going to go over the whole thing because I've gone over it in the video I just mentioned. But basically, I may be debating food shops on transmedicalism. I made a research document. We are currently expanding the research document. So far, we have looked at cis people being able to access drugs and procedures without the barriers that face trans people. Right now, we're looking into a couple of transmedicalist organizations that support conversion therapy. We're looking at Gender Dysphoria Alliance and TREV, which is Trans Educational Voices. So yeah, we're checking out a clip, not the whole thing, just a clip from a Jesse Gender video about Buck Angel signing an open letter that is, in my opinion, very conspiratorial and transphobic. Holy crap, that's a lot of viewers. Welcome to the stream.
Of fun. And by fun, I mean not fun in the slightest.
Yeah, Somnio was here first.
Basically, the letter claims that trans women as an entire group are attacking and abusing trans men as an entire group, and the trans community as a whole. But in reality, though, this letter uses disproven scientific theories and transphobic narratives to make its vague and deliberately misleading accusations. Even further, with it being signed by someone as well known as Buck Angel, it misleadingly reinforces and intentionally leans into transphobic framings currently being wielded by harmful anti-trans hate groups like TERFs or the alt-right, as well as a long-standing history of harmful stereotypes of trans women as deceptive and violent and mentally ill, all done in order to justify its further attack on trans women specifically and trans rights as a whole. So for today's video, I want to take this letter not just to talk about why it's harmful and pushing really transphobic ideas and narratives, but also use it as a way to discuss the history of discriminatization and stigmatization of trans women as a whole. Then we're going to broaden out and talk about the context of this letter, not only within history and how that feeds into today, and not only with the letter itself, but why the narrative that this letter feeds into is directly and intentionally supporting the dogma of anti-transgender hate groups like TERFs and the alt-right. Also, just to point out, as is the case with all of my videos, the goal here isn't to tear down or attack someone else. While I find a lot of Buck Angels and other folks we'll be talking about in this video's views harmful, the goal here is to explain where these views come from and why.
Okay, so what we're looking for is, to tie it back to the other thing that I had, we want to figure out if they support conversion therapy, and then we want like proof of that. So we're going to look for that. Here we go. Oh yeah, let me link the video in chat, just in case anybody wants to watch it in their own time. Hold on. Also, I should probably make Somnio a moderator, just in case. I'm going to make a couple of moderators. Just because I did not expect to have so many people here. So we're going to look for that. Okay. How do we do this? You don't have to. I mean, you don't have to be a moderator if you don't want to. Okay. All right. If you're ready. Phenomenal cosmic power. All right, we have some moderators now. Are you familiar with GenSpect? Yes, I am familiar with GenSpect. We have a bit about them in the research document, which I am going to share in chat. Let's do that. That is the link to the research document. That is a work in progress, but, you know, that's what we're doing here. Okay. Where is GenSpect? Here it is. So we got 2 points about GenSpect. One is that they fight against trans rights. They are a transmedicalist nonprofit org that lobby against trans healthcare. They played an active role in getting trans healthcare removed for any age from insurance in Florida. They also intervened in a court case in Arizona and campaigned against California's trans refugee status bill. Another thing about them is that they lobby for conversion therapy. Yeah. Oh, and also they seek the 100% desistance, the complete elimination of trans people. So this is like Very interesting. Wait, hold on. 100%. GenSpec also supports an organization called Our Duty, which has stated that it should be the objective of any advanced civilization presented with this problem to target 100% desistance as early as possible. Desistance means when someone stops identifying as transgender and pursuing medical transition. Good to meet you, the Dark Canuck. Yeah, so we got some information about transmedicalist organizations. We are adding more. It's really hard to find a list of transmedicalist organizations. I've been having trouble with that. I wouldn't have found out about these two if not for this video here. Okay, so let's hear Jesse talk about conversion therapy.
I want to point our attention before we finish up on one claim that I find to be very telling, as they state that trans women are behind trying to ban conversion therapy.
They are behind the conversion therapy bans because AGP is a sexual orientation that...
Okay, what is Trans Men Fight Back? What are we talking about here? Is that the same open letter we were just looking at? Is this a different open letter? How many open letters has he signed? Interesting. Is this the same text? No, it's different. It's like the same general gist, but different text. What a farce. Okay.
likely can't be changed through talk therapy, unlike the homosexual subtype, which is best understood as a developmental stage for many LGBT people. Most children with this type of GD resolve it as they become adult gay/lesbians. Only a tiny percentage don't, complicated by things such as homophobia. Developmental psychotherapy can help resolve that. When AGP males control the narrative.
So yeah, what they're talking about is that in here? Psychotherapy. Yep, that's directly from here. Can help resolve that. When AGP males control the narrative, that's autogynephile, by the way. Banning all psychotherapy for gender identity, they are denying those of us with the other types of gender dysphoria options for appropriate treatment, leaving us with medicalization as the only legal option. Okay, so this is signed by both Trev Voices and Gender Dysphoria Alliance Canada. So we can just cross both of these off of our list right now. That's what we needed. So we're going to go back up here. Reduces trans people to a mental illness. We got 2 more transmed orgs. We got Gender Dysphoria Alliance Canada. And TRE Voices. 2 other transmedicalist orgs also support conversion therapy. Okay, so what's next on our list? Right, we wanted to look into, this came up in the food shops debate that we reviewed. We wanted to look into whether or not, what is the polling on like trans people's acceptance among Republicans? particularly with regard to passing. I do not know if there's stats on this, but somebody brought it up in that debate, and I'd be curious to see. So how are we going to look? What are we going to search for? What are the terms? Republicans don't accept trans people who pass versus don't pass. Republican trans acceptance. Let's start there. It is an odd angle. Yeah, I agree. It's just something that Food Shops brought up. Food Shops comes at this topic from some very strange angles, to be fair. I don't even think I'm going to find anything on that, like that particular thing. It is a subjective thing. It would be a qualitative study if there was anything. In fact, I have no idea how they could possibly study that. Yeah, to be honest, I don't even think that's worth trying to find. However, we can still look up whether, like, what trans acceptance is. That's probably going to be in the Vosh research doc. So we'll save that for the end because we got that here already. So we're going to skip this one. Something that came up in another video that I was listening to is the Fenway Health detransition rate study. And I just wanted to take a quick look at what this was about. I mean, yes, there is 800 pages of horses in Vosh's research document, but there's also a blurb about trans people as well. So a new study published LGBT Health found that 13.1% of currently... Oh, let's turn the music back on. What are we doing? Where's the music? There we go. Put that about... Here, let's zoom in. 82.5% of those who have detransitioned attribute their decision to at least one external factor, such as pressure from family, non-affirming school environments, and increased vulnerability to violence, including sexual assault. The study was authored by researchers at the Fenway Institute in Massachusetts and General Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and is believed to be the first rigorous study of these factors that drive transgender and gender-diverse people to detransition. These findings show that detransition and transition regret are not synonymous, despite the two phenomena being frequently conflated in the media and political debates, said Jack Turbin, fellow in child and adolescent psychiatry in Stanford University School of Medicine, lead author of the study. For most people, it appears detransition is forced upon them. Our results highlight the extreme barriers transgender people in the US face when trying to live with their lives authentically. A growing body of literature shows that exposure to discrimination and stigma increases the risk of poor mental health outcomes among transgender and gender-diverse people. But findings from factors leading to detransition among transgender and gender-diverse people in the United States, a mixed methods analysis suggests that stigma and discrimination should also be understood as obstacles to safely living in one's gender identity and expression. The study also buttresses public statements by the American Academy of Pediatrics the American Association of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Public Health Association opposing the 82 bills that have been filed in a majority of states this year. 82 bills? What year did this come out? 2021, wow. We had a lot more bills than that last year. That would contribute to the external factors that led to detransition, such as making it illegal to provide gender-affirming health care to children and teenagers or restricting transgender students' access to school facilities and/or participation in school activities. The study uses data from the 2015 U.S. Transgender Survey conducted by the National Center for Transgender Equality. Okay, what is... We want to, like, look at the study. We don't like, need a summary necessarily. Yeah, let's take a quick look at the exact number of bills. I'm gonna snipe my own video. We'll just mute that. What was it again? So yeah, it went from 60 to 131 to 155 to 587. Quite a lot. Like, who knows what we're getting this year? Okay, we don't want another summary of the video or of the article. We want the actual study. It's the same link. Okay. We got a conclusion. Although there have been published guidelines for gender affirmation, case studies regarding detransition, and published data on the uncommon experience of regret following gender affirmation, there has been little rigorous study with large TGD community samples regarding detransition. This study offers novel insights into the prevalence of this phenomenon and its drivers. These findings are of key clinical importance, and most of the reasons identified for detransitions were adverse external factors that clinical care teams can work to ameliorate to support TGD patients' autonomy and health. We're at 125 already this year, and that was a week ago. Yeah, we are. And the year only started a week ago, yeah. Or 2 weeks ago, basically. Yeah, it's nuts. They're really ramping it up. So what are these? Reasonings for dropping transition. Caregiving reasons. I was caring for my 80-plus-year-old grandmother who had severe dementia, and it was too confusing for her. I don't pass even after facial feminization surgery. Unable to afford HRT. Lack of trans community at the time. Virtually no one heard of queer gender people. Family court order. Part of custody award. That is sad. Blood clotting from estrogen. Pain in binding large chest. Parents took me to a region with hostile doctors. These are the real reasons for detransitioners. People fearmongers, like, oh, people, I lost access to HRT and stopped passing. People fearmonger about, like, oh, these people are quote-unquote genuine detransitioners. Those people exist. Like, people who actually regret transitioning and experience gender dysphoria from the effects of the hormone replacement therapy. But the vast, vast majority of detransitioners are people like this. So this is useful. I think we're going to put this in the research document. I'm not sure what context it'll come up in, but I think it'll be nice to have on hand. And how are we framing this? Majority of detransitioners do so because of lack of support or access to care and services. Okay. So we got that. Now we wanted to look into the affirmative care model and informed model, or model of informed consent. Just like the basic history of those things. Introduction to the gender affirmative care model. I don't know if this is going to add anything to the document. I just kind of wanted to look into these. How long is this? Oh man, do I want to read all this? Okay. We'll see how far we get. Recently, awareness of pre-pubertal gender-diverse children has increased in the United States among the general population as well as among psychologists. Actually, no, let's see if we can find something. We want like a history, not like an article. Oh, interesting. SEGM talking about it. What do they say? This is a Transmed.org. Following extensive stakeholder engagement, systemic review of the evidence. That's interesting. I'm going to look into that later. What is gender affirming care? Okay, this might be more straightforward. As states move to restrict certain types of treatment for transgender youth, experts explain the many types of care, the need for them, and their impact. It's equally long, but whatever. Catherine Imberek, MD, has seen the gender-affirming care provided at UI Healthcare's LGBTQ clinic in the Iowa City change the lives of transgender youths and adults. It decreases depression, anxiety, and suicide attempts, says Imberek, co-director of the clinic. To her, that care is a medical necessity, like providing insulin to a person with diabetes. But a growing number of lawmakers, including Iowa, view some gender-affirming care as medically unsound for youths, and even a form of child abuse. Iowa is among 15 states that have enacted and or are considering laws to prohibit certain gender-affirming treatments for youths, to impose penalties on healthcare professionals who provide it, according to the Williams Institute at the UCLA Law in California. That's in 2022, interesting. The state actions focus on specific therapies under umbrella of gender-affirming care. Okay, so what is it? Gender-affirming care as defined... Ooh, here we go. That's what we want. We want a definition. Also, we want... When did it start? It was 2012, right? 2012? Oh, gender... Sorry, it's not gender... It's the affirmative care model. We got mixed up. We got turned around, chat. Okay, the gender affirmative care model, that's what we want. An interdisciplinary approach to supporting transgender and gender expansive children. Recently, awareness of prepubertal gender diverse children has... Is this the article we were just reading? How do we read this? This is a preview page. Log in through your institution for access. Oh no, this is one of those things. Can I use like Sci-Hub to get onto this? Okay, let's try Sci-Hub. Nope. Maybe I can just take the text and search Google. Okay, now let's try Sci-Hub. Nope. Get access. Purchase PDF, $20. I don't have that kind of money. Dang. Freaking ivory tower over here, holy crap. Okay. I guess we're reading this. Oh wait, this is what we wanted! Oh my god. Okay, we got it. I'm being a picky baby. Alright, let's just read it. Recently, awareness of prepubertal gender-diverse children has increased in the United States among the general population as well as among psychologists. American Psychological Association, Aaron Saft. Major media outlets have likewise increasingly featured transgender children and their families, while hotly debating their treatment needs. In the same vein, diverse gender identities, behaviors that diverge from gender stereotypes, and distress at home and school related to these issues are increasingly common presentations in child clinical settings. Thus, the need to prepare psychologists, other mental health professionals, and professionals from all disciplines who work with children and families. Outpatient clinics that specialize in working with transgender and gender-expansive children have seen a threefold rise in the amount of child referrals they have received over the past 30 years. Recent literature indicates the vast majority of counseling and education programs fail to prepare practitioners to be competent clinicians to serve the needs of TGE youth. Sci-Hub can have problems with book chapters sometimes. It's better to go for LibGen for the entire book. Okay, that's good to know. I'll keep that in mind. Outpatient clinics that specialize in working... Okay, we read that. Similarly, most public health and medical school training programs fail to train their students to be gender-sensitive practitioners. Even programs that include lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, or questioning, LGBTQ. Oh, so it can mean both. Yoon was right. In the debate with Food Shops, Yoon was like, the Q stands for questioning, and Food Shops was like, oh my god, you're so stupid. But there it is. Right here from the American Psychological Association. Oh, shit. Okay. Trainings commonly exclude transgender issues or only briefly mention them as an afterthought. The focus is usually on the experiences of adults who transition after puberty, and the prepubertal TGE children and adolescents fall off the radar screen completely. Because gender identity develops between ages 1.5 and 3 years, and sexual orientation develops as early as age 8. Access to information about how to work with TGE children is essential for professionals who work with young children. A sea change in gender has been occurring in such a short time. It has hit land and rocked the earth as it has at home in communities, in society, and across the globe. In February 2014, Facebook changed its US profile options for gender, extending it from 2 to 50 plus categories, including transgender, cisgender, agender, based, gender fluid, intersex, neither trans nor female, trans male, trans person, gender variant, gender questioning, bigender, androgynous, pangender, and transsexual. People creating a profile can choose as many categories as they want. In 2012, California passed legislation, Sexual Orientation Change Efforts, prohibiting mental health practitioners from engaging in practices that attempted to change a minor's gendered behaviors. That's pretty cool. I want to look into that. 2012. Sexual orientation change efforts. Yeah, all the genders. We got them. Okay, wait, I'm just gonna bookmark this for later. Actually, we'll put it in the doc. Alright. New Jersey soon followed suit, along with the District of Columbia, and, as of this writing, 15 other states have similar bills pending. Looking north across the border, Ontario passed a no reparative therapy bill in 2015, in the same year that President Obama in the White House issued a statement condemning the practice of reparative therapy. In 2013, California passed another piece of legislation: pupil rights, sex-segregated school programs and activities, ensuring that all students in public schools are allowed to use the facilities and engage in activities associated with their affirmed gender, rather than their natal sex. In 2013, gender identity disorder was removed from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition DSM-5, and replaced by a more palatable but still problematic mental health diagnosis of gender dysphoria. In fall 2011, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, WPATH, released its new standards of care, which stated explicitly that it is unethical and harmful to engage in any form of therapy that attempts to change one's gender. And that's basically what we're looking at, by the way, as well, is the before we had the affirmative care model, what doctors did was try to a patient would come up to them and say, "Hey, I think I'm trans," and doctors would be like, "Well, have you tried not being trans?" Or they would try to like talk them out of it, or to say like to try and like to try and change their gendered behaviors, to try and like get them to desist in some way. And basically this is conversion therapy. And I guess in 2012, thereabouts, we adopted this model, which is a lot better. Because now doctors can... Yeah, dissuade, basically, yeah. Now doctors can say, okay, I hear you, let's figure it out together. And they'll go through the actual diagnostic criteria and, like, they'll look for gender dysphoria, and they're not going to be like, oh, okay, well, you're not trans. And as far as we can tell, it does a lot less harm. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. That seems pretty intuitive, but as far as I can tell, the data seems to back that up. So we're just kind of learning about the history of that. The APA 2015 followed suit and released a large volume of new guidelines for gender affirmative care. However, the majority of the focus of the guidelines and standards on TGE adults. New gender clinics have begun to pop up across the United States and beyond to aid children in affirming their authentic gender. The gender affirmative approach has emerged and has become an ascending international model for supporting children's gender health. An effort that we are proud to be a part of. Simultaneously, therapeutic models aimed at altering children's gender to conform to cultural norms or influencing children to accept the gender that matches the sex on their birth certificate have been challenged, declared unethical, and evaluated as harmful to children's well-being. In 2007, Barbara Waters moderated a 2020 documentary on transgender kids. It was the first of its kind in TV broadcasts and a transformative turn of events in media history. I would like to look into that. Look into this. That's for the future. With transgender children and their families from cities and small towns over the United States, not just well-known liberal enclaves, such as Berkeley, California, portrayed in a positive and empathetic light. At the time of this writing, late 2016, It seems that a week does not go by without a new media account of TGE children. Yeah, that would be interesting to watch. I don't know if I can watch it on YouTube. If that was from TV, which it sounds like it definitely was, then it's probably copyright, but maybe I can like watch it on Kick, or we could do like a watch party or something. As these changes have rolled out in such a short band of time, we gender specialists in partnership with the families who are raising children can hardly keep up. Every day we learn more and see how much more we have to learn about helping our children discover and fortify their true gender selves. This isn't a whole book. I guess there's a book attached. Is the first of its kind in representing the expertise of a wide number of gender specialists in the field, aims to serve as a substantive guide to inform clinical work. Oh, right, because this is just the introduction, and then like that JTOR page linked to like the entire book. That's why it cost $20. Okay. Defining terms, here's what we want. Our genders are as unique as we are. No one's definition is the same, and compartmentalizing a person as either a boy or a girl based entirely on the appearance of genitalia at birth undercuts our complex life experiences. The complexity of gender mock, referred to along with the ever-changing and not universally agreed upon vernacular of communities and professional associations, especially when referring to children, underscores the daunting task of deciding on the terminology to use throughout this volume. We have created a working language to help readers conceptualize TGE identities and ways of being. At the same time, we realize other terms, gender creative, gender nonconforming, gender variant, gender independent, may be seen through the academic literature and social media, as well as heard in conversations with and about TGE people as they describe dynamics and attributes of children we are talking about. The reader should be prepared for a bit of language juggling as they read through and gain more experience working with this population, understanding that each of these terms, while nuanced, refers to the same entity. A scan of these professional literature reveals the term gender nonconforming to be the most often used. Yeah, I've run into that the most when reading stuff. Especially in like the WPATH as well. However, similar to the term gender variant, many find that gender nonconforming has a somewhat negative connotation other than normal, not too far off from deviant, and can serve to reify a normative or conforming gender. No sooner do we think we have all the new terminology about gender clear in our heads than we discover that we are all wrong, and that today's words are already passé. With that in mind, we present a map of our current conceptualization of gender terminology. We see gender diverse as the umbrella term that refers to this group of children with two subcategories. Actually, yeah, I have seen gender diverse a lot as well. Transgender and gender expansive. I haven't seen gender expansive very often, but I don't mind it. Gender identity is not visible. True. It is one's innermost concept of self as boy or girl or both or neither. How individuals perceive and know themselves, as well as what they call themselves. It is a biological, psychological, social, and cultural concept. No one's sex includes several components: chromosomes, relative levels of sex hormones, post-puberty, internal genitalia, and external genitalia, the latter used to assign sex at birth. Transgender refers to anyone whose gender identity differs from their sex assigned at birth. That is, everyone else has told you that they're a girl and is at odds with how you know yourself. A transgender boy was assigned sex of female at birth and his gender identity is a boy. Cisgender refers to the majority of the population, individuals whose gender identity assigns with the sex they were assigned at birth. That is, everyone else has told you you are a boy and matches how you know yourself. A cisgender boy was assigned the sex of male at birth and his gender identity is boy. It's pretty straightforward. We don't really need all of this. We want to know just about the affirmative care model and its effects. Transgender subcategory, both binary, okay. Talking about gender as soon as they begin. This might be useful. Transgender children typically consistently, persistently, and insistently express a binary or non-binary gender and realize that their gender is different from their assigned sex. They may begin talking about their gender as soon as they begin to speak, and some may express dissatisfaction with their external genitalia. Transgender children are more likely to experience gender dysphoria, discomfort related to their bodies not matching their internal sense of gender, as well as associated social distress, than other gender-diverse children, although some transgender children are comfortable with their bodies. These children may state that they are really the other gender, or that someone made a mistake in their gender assignment. An important part of affirming these children may include changing relational terms, brother to sibling, or he or she to they, and names Gerald to Jessica or Jera. The biological basis of gender identity in transgender people has been investigated for decades and found to be more complex than originally anticipated. Although a full discussion of this complexity is beyond the scope of this book, it is important to know that being transgender has no one biological cause. At the same time, genetic and neuroanatomic influences have been demonstrated. Twin studies of monozygotic and dizygotic twins demonstrate a genetic component where twin pairs with at least one transgender twin, monozygotic identical twins, are much more likely to be transgender than dizygotic twins. Zoe, Hoffman, Gorin, and Swab focused on a sexually dimorphic region of the brain, the central subdivision of the bed of nucleus stria terminalis, which is about 2 times larger in cisgender men than in cisgender women. They found that the BTSC in transgender women was found to more closely resemble that of cisgender women than cisgender men, and proposed this evidence for a neurobiological basis of gender identity. The history of neuroanatomical studies examining brain differences in transgender and cisgender people has been fraught with small sample sizes and the confounding variable of adult exposure to exogenous hormones, and as research methods included examining brains of transgender cadavers who had been exposed to exogenous hormones through hormone therapy. However, newer neuroanatomical research studies are able to measure living participants using new diffusion tensor imaging, which eliminates the confounder of exposure to hormone therapy, as participants are measured before the hormone treatment. Remedi and colleagues have posited that white matter microstructure pattern may be a part of the neuroanatomical basis of gender identity. In their study of transgender men who had not initiated hormone treatment, the white matter microstructure pattern in their brains was closer to that of cisgender men, with whom they share a common gender identity, than that of cisgender women, with whom they share a common assigned sex. We're going to pause here for a second just to reiterate that while all of this may be true, it's just worth noting that most brains fall into a wide spectrum of characteristics and are not fully male or female, and that aside from size, there are few major differences between male and female brains. So sexed brains and gendered brains isn't like a huge thing. Although there is limited research to support this. It is interesting that their study of transgender women who had not initiated hormone therapy yielded somewhat different results. The white matter microstructure pattern in the brains of transgender women was in between that of cisgender men and women, and beyond the binary finding. More research hypothesizes that white matter microstructure development may be influenced by the hormonal environment in utero during the late stages before birth, as well as early during postnatal brain development. Although researchers do not know the exact mechanism or interplay of mechanisms that underlie gender identity development at present, they do know that gender identity has a biological component, supporting the notion that gender identity is not confined to boy or girl only. It's also worth noting that our brains change constantly over the course of our lifetime. We don't just have a single brain structure that we are born with and then die with. Our brains are constantly changing due to hormones and other factors in our environment. Gender expansive refers... How much longer is... Oh my god, this is so long. Do we want to read this whole thing? Is this the stream? Is this what we're here for? I'll do it. Alright, let's keep going. Stop me if this is boring, chat. Gender expansive refers to anyone whose gender expression differs from what is expected, typically based on the gender identity. Gender expression refers to... Okay, well, Palm Dad's listening. Gender expression refers to readily visible sets of norms, including behaviors, clothing, hairstyle, mannerisms, roles, activities, and so on, that are ascribed to one gender or another, typically referred to as masculine, feminine, or androgynous. Gender expansive children, known as gender creative or gender nonconforming or gender independent, do not abide by the prescribed gender norms of their culture. Their gender expression is not consistent with socially prescribed gender roles. Their preferences for toys, clothing, sports, activities, playmates, hair length, and style, and or accessories are not expected in the culture based on their sex assigned at birth. Gender expansive children are usually perceived to be pink boys and tomboys. Seems relevant still. Yeah, I think so. I think we're just gonna power through it, because I don't know what all is gonna come up in here and how relevant everything will be. It is quite possible for an individual to be both transgender in identity and gender diverse in expressions at the same time. For example, a child who is assigned male at birth has a gender identity of girl and expresses consisting of mainly those ascribed as masculine. That is, a tomboy trans girl. Jess is one of those people. Assigned male at birth, Jess, then Jessie, balked at the terrible mistake that had been made, and by age 9 was living in her affirmed gender identity girl. Yet she never gave up her camouflage pants and short haircut, or the army figures she liked to fight pretend battles with, as she happily lived her life as a girl named Jess. Okay, here's a question. Would a transmedicalist like bully this girl back into the closet? Be like, oh, you're not trans enough because you're playing with army figures and wearing camo pants. There's my question. Maybe that's a question for food shops when we talk. When we use the term TGE term in this volume, we refer to all children who challenge and explore gender identity and gender expressions. No matter what language and terminology researchers struggle to develop that will both reflect and be respectful of the multiple ways gender can present itself. Children will lead the way in carving out their own self-descriptions, categorizations, and assignations of gender. So we now build onto pre-existing lists, consisting of all the ways that we have heard gender described by the children who have come to see us, along with some items borrowed from social media, other people's writings, and word on the street. Somnio says, didn't they talk about gender expression and stuff in a weird way in that debate we went over, or gender identity? Yeah, she talked about it in a very weird way. But she was mostly just fear-mongering about, like, they-fabs. It always comes back to the they-fabs. I don't know why. And she was very, very concerned. Yeah, Pippa, I agree. I might ask that if it comes up. She was very concerned about, like, people, about her words, hot girls with big boobs, and he, they pronouns, or she, they pronouns. That's like the big concern that's apparently doing harm to the trans movement. Yeah, big peepo, Gender fluid children. Children who defy the norms of binary gender and either slide along a gender spectrum or weave their own intricate individual patterns along the gender web. The word fluid here refers to the potential for movement through further development of one's understanding of their gender. Gender smoothies. Gender smoothies are a variation of the theme of gender fluid. As one teenager vividly described it, you take everything about gender, throw it in the blender, press the button, and you've got me, a gender smoothie. Yes, transmedicalism is very silly. In so many different ways. Gender hybrids. Oh my god, this would trigger transmedicalists so much right now. Children who combine or alternate between genders, often in a binary way. The funny part is that this is coming from the American Psychological Association. Like, to be a transmedicalist, you have to reject all of these all of these peer-reviewed organizations that like doctors around the world rely on. Half girl or half boy. This gender label was invented by a school-age child who, from the front, looked like any boy in basketball shorts, tank top, and basketball sneakers, and from the back had a long braid tied at the end with a bright pink bow. You see, I'm Prius, a boy in the front, and a girl in the back, a hybrid. Gender minotaur. A descriptor for children who explain that they are one gender on the top and another on the bottom. This is usually to account for genitals at odds with the gender they know themselves to be. Gender by season children. Children who freely express their authentic gender identity during summer and school vacations, but never at school, or alternatively use school as the safe place to be their true gender self, but keep it under wraps when they're at home or on summer vacations. Gender by location children. A close cousin to gender by season. A child who knows the locations or is told the locations where free gender expression will be accepted, and other locations where it is not. And chooses or is told to keep their authentic gender muted or under wraps in the unwelcoming locations, such as conservative Aunt Mary's wedding reception. Yeah, the gender mullet. Genderqueer youth. Not only a category of gender, but also a social movement of young people who ask us, why do you even bother? We are so beyond gender. They are any and all, never either or, and they challenge our thinking and carve a new path in which they invite us all to both imagine and embody a world where there is no gender, or where gender is no longer a defining category. They may also identify with the term non-binary. Proto-gay children. Children who start out exploring and pushing the margins of gender on their way to discovering their sexual orientation identity. Technically exploring their gender expressions rather than gender identity, though not always. Proto-transgender youth, children who travel in the exact opposite direction from the proto-gay children. In the process of exploring their sexual orientation identity, usually in adolescence or young adulthood, they discover often through their romantic or sexual liaisons that it is not actually their sexuality but their gender that is in question, and move to understand themselves as transgender. Gender Tootsie Roll Pops. Children who exhibit one gender on the outside but experience another gender on the inside. To follow the metaphor, the crunchy outside is often the gender that accommodates the expectations of the surrounding world, and the soft gooey inside is the stuff of authenticity and realness. The hard candy is in place to protect or shield the inside chewiness from an unaccepting world, or an internalized, unaccepting part of one's own self. It should be noted that the gender Tootsie Roll Pops, if not provided with resilience building, are often at most the most at-risk TGE children. Are all of these labels... Yeah, Aunt Mary sucks, I hate her. Are all of these labels self-subscribed, or are doctors like diagnosing these labels? Probably not. I have no idea, though. Gender ambidextrous children. Children who use both their girl self and their boy self interchangeably. It may be the child who is a sister to her brother but a male playmate to the boy across the street. Or the child who is full-out femme one day but totally masculine style buff the next. If children can use both their left and right hand on par with each other, so too can they use their girl and boy part of self, not to mention all the parts in between and beyond those two genders, ergo, the gender ambidextrous child. They may also identify with the term bigender. Gender Teslas. The gender Tesla is the transgender state some children reach after a stint being a gender hybrid or gender ambidextrous. Yeah, it seems like these are self-described. Some simply go from 0 to 60 to get there, meaning that from the sex assigned to them at birth to their affirmed gender identity, some go more slowly. We could say that any child in the transgender category would count as a Tesla, but we are preserving this term for children who are in motion towards an all-one gender status. Agender youth. A close cousin of, if not the same as, genderqueer youth. We can play with the word agender, seeing of its double entendres. I am a gender, but not a particular gender, or I am devoid of gender, similar to asexual, which is the more common referent to the meaning of agender. These are youth who, and similar to their genderqueer compatriots, are also pushing beyond the limits of constricting gender confines to say, you can't catch me. If it means pinning down a particular gender, or any sense of gender at all, as being relevant to living a life. Indeed, many agender youth also reference themselves as genderqueer or non-binary. It is important to note that these terms focus on gender, not sexuality. The two are certainly intertwined, but are often confused for each other. Not only are the concept of gender and sexuality intertwined, but also ideas about what's normal for one's gender encompass sexuality, cisnormativity, gender conformance, and heteronormativity. For example, when one disentangles what it means to be a man, gender identity, man, sex assumed to be male, one realizes that the underlying expectation is that to be a man, a person should also act like a man. This expectation commonly comes along with the concurrent assumption that acting like a man also means being sexually attracted to women. Sexuality and sexual orientation identity have to do with many things, but at their center is the object of desire. Do these people desire those who are the same or different gender from what they are? Those of any gender, those of fluidly defined gender, those who are transgender, or those of no declared gender. Gender identity and gender expression, on the other hand, have to do with how people incorporate their own culture's definitions about being male or female into their own internal preferences, desires, and recognition of who they are as a boy, man, girl, woman, third gender, fourth gender, and so on. As people reach adulthood, they can think of it this way. Sexual orientation identity has to do with who they want to get into bed with. Gender identity has to do with who they get into bed as. A transgender person can be gay, bisexual, straight, or any other sexual orientation identity. The most common sexual orientation identity of transgender adults is queer, indicating a desire to be understood outside of traditional definitions. A gay person can be cisgender or transgender, and a gender expansive or gender conforming in terms of gender expression, and so forth. We hope this differentiation between gender and sexual orientation serves as a helpful compass to hold in hand as this book unfolds and follow the TGE child's journey through the mental health system. I might want to download this book and read it in the future, to be honest. So this book focuses on children. Okay, I don't know if we're going to read the rest of this. How much longer is this? Alright, this is page 16. Because I want to save my voice for the rest of this. Yeah, we didn't get to tucking it. This is very interesting stuff, but what we really want is information about the gender affirmative care model. Controversy exists as to whether the DSM-5 gender dysphoria diagnosis for children. Here, let me link this in chat just to be fair. I'm going to put it in the doc as well. It's going to go into the research doc. Controversy exists as to whether the DSM-5 gender dysphoria diagnosis for children pathologizes normal variations in gender role behaviors and adaptations or represents a psychiatric medical disorder. WPATH and the Endocrine Society have both published guidelines. Ooh, we want to look at that. That might be in the Vosh research doc. That's going to be the next thing we look at, probably. That include treatment of adolescents, yet no expert consensus on the treatment of prepubertal children exists. This is a particularly glaring problem because research has indicated the social support of children in their gender development is directly correlated with mental health outcomes for children. Yet the field of psychology is divided on the form that social support should take in what constitutes gender health in children. At the same time, legislative actions have already been taken or are being proposed in 3 states in the United States that prohibit the use of therapeutic interventions that attempt to change a minor's gender behaviors. Prior treatment models have included a wait and see to see if these behaviors desist approach. So yeah, those are the 3 models. It used to be either wait and see or basically conversion therapy. Prohibition of starting adolescents on cross-sex hormones until 16, and attempts to behaviorally modify gender non-conforming behavior in young children and help them live in their own skin, that is, the sex assigned to them at birth. In contrast, the GAM, upon which this book is based, is emerging as a treatment of choice of many gender specialists in the United States and in other countries. We posit the GAM to be the best practice for children and adolescents in their gender development. Central to the GAM is the evidence-based idea that attempting to change or contort a person's gender does harm. Instead, the GAM identifies gender health as follows. This is what we've been looking for this whole time. The opportunity for a child to live in the gender that feels most real and or comfortable for the child, and the ability for children to express gender without experiencing restriction, criticism, or ostracism. Hello, Lord Pasta. Welcome to the stream. We are doing transmedicalism research. Right now we're looking at the gender affirmative model of trans healthcare, which is in contrast to the old models, which were the wait and see model, which was to wait and see if people stop being trans before doing anything, and the other model, which is basically just have you tried not being trans? And this model is you affirm the person's gender and then you work forward with that in mind. In the model, the role of the mental health professional is a facilitator in helping a child discover and live their authentic gender with adequate social supports. We as mental health professionals are their translators, striving to understand what they are telling us about their gender in words, actions, feelings, thoughts, and relationships. Even though transgender people encounter multiple obstacles, including coming out as well as possibly losing family, friends, partners, and employment opportunities, rates of regrets of gender transition in adults are extremely low, 0 to 2%, with the majority of transgender adults stating that their only regret is not transitioning earlier. The lives of transgender people I want to read that. That's going in the document. That's something we're going to look up later, next time we do more research. A recurring theme was seen across nearly 3,500 adults they interviewed. A story went something like this. Okay, so that's a study. Actually, we're going to look that up next. If only I had the supports and green light that some of the young children have today, I would have had such a better life. I always knew since I was little that my gender was not what people thought, but as there was no place to go with it, so I had to wait and wait with so many years of pain and suffering until I could get to the place that was me. The gender affirmative model is informed by the stories of transgender adults who have been telling us this for years. As more and more providers become proficient in working with TGE children, they won't have to wait near as long to be who they are. As psychologists and mental health providers, we are bound by the oath that dictates the actions of all medical and mental health professionals: do no harm. Yet all around us, physicians, psychiatrists, and child therapists are doing just that. In clinics and in private practice consultations, rooms where patients are advised to take away their little boys' dolls and pink tights, or make their little girls grow out of their buzz cuts. Mothers and fathers are directed to ignore or punish their children's inappropriate gender expressions, and pay attention to or reward only the gender-appropriate ones. And families are sent home to make sure the TGE children are redirected to same-sex friendly friendships, and to their same-sex parent as the main or only parent to identify with. Replacing that viewpoint with the perspective of GAM provides a new lens through which people can clearly see the vibrant plethora of TGE children. Looking through this lens, one can see children who declare, sometimes at a very early age, that the gender they are is not the one they were assigned at birth. Aaron Saft, 2011 to 2016, created the concept of the gender web to guide viewing of the children. The gender web is a four-dimensional structure, the three material dimensions being nature, nurture, and culture, and the fourth dimension being time. Imagine a spider web stretched out in a tree to get the visual image. A web that may change its dimensions over time as the spider enhances its home. The gender web is each child's personal creation, spinning together the three major threads of nature, nurture, and culture that interface to allow the child to construct a gender self. Like fingerprints, no two individuals' gender webs will be exactly the same. Unlike fingerprints, the gender web is not immutable. It will inevitably change over time. Nurture is culture, I don't know. Yeah, you could say that. Definitely you could say that as part of environment. I'm not sure how they're differentiating it. I guess we would have to actually look at that, which is probably a topic for another time. Maybe there's like some important differentiation. While people are little to promote individual gender health defined as freedom to explore and live as the gender that feels most authentic, the only person who should be doing that spinning is the child. If parents grab the thread of the web as children are spinning it, and tell them what their gender has to be, rather than listening as children spell out their gender, or rather than watching them do their own creative work, the web risks ending up as a tangled knot of threads, rather than a beautifully spun web that shimmers and glows. Alternatively, if parents and the surrounding environment facilitate, protect, and respect children's creative spinning, they stand up to grow gender healthy and proud. It is the role of the gender affirmative clinician to assure that the latter occurs. So now we got a theoretical basis. And I'm going to be right back. I'm just going to grab some water. Too late, Naomi. We're back. The gender affirmative model, theoretical basis. The major theoretical bases informing the GAM of clinical practice are: no gender identity or expression is pathological. Gender presentations are diverse and vary across cultures, requiring our cultural sensitivity. According to current knowledge, gender involves an integration of biology, development, and socialization, and culture and context, with all of these bearing on any individual's gender self. Gender may be fluid and is not binary, both at a particular time point and if and when it changes within an individual over time. And any pathology that is present is more often caused by cultural reactions to gender diversity, i.e. transphobia, homophobia, sexism, than by internal psychological disturbances within the child. Implicit in this model is a focus on resilience, coping, and wellness. The GAM serves to assist in facilitating gender health, not labeling any part of gender as an illness. We do not see gender diversity as an illness, but rather a variation of health. We define gender health as a child's opportunity to live as the gender that feels most real or comfortable to the child, and to express that gender with the freedom from restriction, aspiration, or rejection. Recent emerging research indicates that those children who are not allowed to these freedoms are at later risk for negative psychological outcomes. Ooh, we really want that. That's super useful for this context. Okay, wait, we're looking into that. That will definitely come up in a transmedicalism debate. Okay, we're going to put that in the list. We can format that later. The GAM is supported by this research, as it also finds that family acceptance acts as a protective factor against these negative outcomes, and that building gender resilience helps a child to be confident in a world that may be far from accepting TGE people. The GAM holds several tenets. Primary to these tenets is that we, as care providers, need to be able to reevaluate our social constructs of gender and sexuality within our cultural context and the positions we impose on children. We see gender identity and expression as a basic human right. GAM practitioners should remain open to fluidity and changes over time, and listen closely to our children's best attempt to explain themselves and respond in an affirming way, as there is no way to know with complete certainty what the gender and sexuality of a child will be once they reach adulthood. Much of the work of GAM clinicians involves helping parents cope with the not knowing and moving forward to deal with what is known. As therapists, we should increase our ability to make use of the countertransference and manage our own biases, and minimize risk in collapsing our clinical judgment. One priority is to tease out what is gender dysphoric stress and something else, and treat in a triage and harm reduction fashion, as well as go deep into the psychological and social experiences of the children we treat in the context of the family, community, and culture in which they live. As GAM practitioners, we aim to increase our capacity to not know, be curious, and celebrate human diversity. And then they talk about the book. I don't think we need to read that. Okay. So now we know what the gender affirmative care is. We got kind of like a basis of the model. They said something about adoption. Why is PDF searching so slow on Microsoft Edge? That's what I want to know. Okay. Okay, yeah, that was talking about banning conversion therapy. It's never too late to Yahoo. So do we have like a list? What we want is a list of like all the places that use the GAM model. I guess that might not just be regional. It might be like based on like doctor to doctor. Gender affirmation model. Adoption. Oh, it is adoption. I always get the two adoptions mixed up. Okay, here's something good. Oh no, that's from GenSpec though. This is gonna be biased as fuck. Oh boy. Can we get something peer-reviewed? No. Gender affirmative treatment model for youth with gender dysphoria. Published 2021. What do we got here? This is not data. This is like individual case studies. I mean, there's not necessarily not data. Alright, well I'm just gonna cite the APA, and the transmeds can suck it. You know? I don't think we have to go that deep on this one. I don't even think it's gonna get to like us citing this in the first place, but we're just trying to cover all of, like, as many bases as we can in a realistic amount of time. Okay, so we're gonna... They had a useful blurb that we could use for our document. Stopping the harm, I think. Controversy exists. Normal variations. Differing perspectives. Okay, we're going to start here. Yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take this and we're going to put that in other information. And it looks like we lost our link to this. I hope we can find that. Uh-oh. I think that was the Fenway Health thing, right? Yeah, that was this. All right. So that is the affirmative care model. We were going to take a brief look at the model of informed consent. Not nearly as deep of a dive. I just wanted to kind of look at what it is and how it compares to the affirmative care model. I just want a basic definition, basically. Model of informed consent medicine. Obtaining informed consent in medicine is the process that should include describing the proposed intervention, emphasizing the patient's role in decision-making, discussing alternatives to the proposed intervention, discussing the risks. Okay, yeah, so that's pretty self-explanatory, I guess. The doctrine of informed consent has been controversial since its inception. In spite of the professed ideal of improving physician-patient communication, many commentators have argued that it interferes with the relationship. However, the problem may not be the doctrine itself, but rather the manner in which it is usually implemented. This article describes two different ways in which informed consent can be implemented. The event model treats informed consent as a procedure to be performed once in a treatment course, which must cover all legal elements at the same time. The process model, in contrast, tries to integrate informing the patient into the continuing dialogue between physician and patient that is a routine part of diagnosis and treatment. We suggest that the process model has many benefits. That's interesting. How do I read this? I don't know. More about ongoing consent, a good thing. Yeah. Informed consent process model. Okay, I don't know if this is going to be useful to this particular thing, although that is very interesting. All right, so we were going to skim through the W path. We can do that. We're not going to read the whole thing. I just kind of wanted to skim. Oh, holy crap. Yeah, 280 pages. We're definitely not reading the whole thing. What might be of interest to us here? Global applicability, population estimates, education, assessment of adults, adolescents, children, non-binary. We might take a look at non-binary. Institutional environments, hormone therapy, voice and communication, primary care. We might look at that. Mental health, we might look at that. I might look at hormone therapy and surgery. Are these links? Okay, they are. Assessment of adults. Okay, let's look at that one. They are not links, but that's okay. S31. This chapter provides guidance for the assessment of transgender and gender diverse adults. Requesting medically necessary gender-affirming medical and/or surgical treatments to better align their body with their gender identity. TGD adults are people who are above the age of majority in their country who have some form of gender diversity. An individual's gender identity is an internal identification and experience. The role of the assessor is to access the presence of gender incongruence and identifying any coexisting mental health concerns. How do I scroll? Here we go. Very choppy scrolling. Some systems use a model of care for TGD adults seeking GAMST, gender-affirming medical or surgical treatments, that prioritizes TGD adult as the decision maker with the HCP acting as an advisor, barring serious contraindications. What is that? Okay. These models are used when considering hormone therapy rather than surgery and are often called informed consent models. Oh, hey, we literally just looked that up. Is that a link? 2016A. Okay, whatever. Many such models utilize an abbreviated assessment that focuses primarily on the ability of a TGD person to grant informed consent and to utilize information about GAMSTs to inform their medical decision-making. Alright, hope you have a good time, Palm Dad. Stay warm out there. I wish your palm trees luck in surviving the cold. Okay, is there anything useful here? Is there anything we want? I'm not seeing... Less common treatments. Counseling with psychotherapy. We recommend healthcare professionals assessing transgender and gender diverse adults for physical treatments. We are licensed by statutory body and hold at minimum a master's degree equivalent training. Okay, so this is not relevant. This might not have anything that we need in here. I just kind of wanted to look through it anyway. Okay, these are more like requirements for clinicians. We don't need this. Wait. Hold on. Okay, yeah, this is about educating, like, the actual doctors. That's not super relevant. Ensure any mental health conditions that could negatively affect or impact the outcome of gender-affirming medical treatments are assessed, with risks and benefits discussed before a decision is made regarding treatment. Like their cisgender counterparts, TGD people may have mental health problems. Treatment for mental health problems can and should occur in conjunction with GAMSTS when medical transition is needed. It is vital gender-affirming care is not impeded unless in some extremely rare cases. There is robust evidence that doing so is necessary to prevent significant decompensation with a risk of harm to self or others. In those cases, it is also important to consider the risks delaying intervention poses to a TGD person's mental and physical health. In general, social and medical transition of TGD people is both associated with a reduction in mental health problems. I don't think a transmedicalist would even contest that. Unfortunately, the loss of social support and the physical and financial stress that can be associated with the initiation of GAMSTS may exacerbate pre-existing mental health problems and warrant additional support from the treating HCP. An assessment of mental health symptoms can improve transition outcomes, particularly when the assessment is used to facilitate access to psychological and social support during transition. A delay of transition in rare circumstances may be considered if, for example, the TGD person is unable to engage with the process of transition or would be unable to manage aftercare following surgery. Even with support where a delay in GAMST as a last resort has been found to be necessary. The HCP should offer resources and support to improve mental health and facilitate the re-engagement with GAMST process as soon as it is practicable. It should be noted, access to medical transition for TGD people facilitates social transition and improves safety in public. In turn, the degree to which TGD people's appearance conforms to their gender identity is the best predictor for quality of life and mental health outcomes following medical transition. Delaying access to GAMSTs due to the presence of mental health problems may exacerbate symptoms and damage rapport. Consequently, this should be done only when all other avenues have been exhausted. Owen Smith, 2018. What is that linking to? I want to take a look at that. Smith. There's a lot of references to it, but where's the link? Looks like this is it. Nope. Do we got a Wayback Machine? Can we find an archive? We got an archive. What is this? No. Okay. It archived a broken page. Alright, where were we? We're gonna go back to the top. Thanks, Grass. Okay, what's next? That was assessment of adults. Let's take a look at... What else do we want to take a look at? Let's take a look at terminology real quick, just to see what it says. That's just chapter 1. That's just our thing here. In this document, we use the phrase transgender and gender diverse to be as broad as comprehensive in describing members of the many varied communities of globally people with gender identities or expressions that differ from the gender socially attributed to the sex assigned to them at birth. This includes people who have culturally specific and or language specific experiences, identities, or expressions and or that are not based on encompassed by Western conceptualizations of gender or the language used to describe it. That's another thing with transmedicalists, is that like they're relying so hard on like a very particular type of hegemonic gender categories that only exist in a very small snapshot of history, in a very, very narrow cultural context that kind of ignores a lot of different historical contexts. That's something else we might be able to look into in the future. But I don't think we'll get to that before we talk to food shops, so that'll just be like an aside. Language selected in this chapter may not be, or ever could be, comprehensive of every culture, geographic region, locale. Yeah. I don't think we really need any definitions, actually. We have our definitions. So let's go back. Okay, I think we're gonna skip this, but we might come back to it if we have time. Let's see what was next on our itinerary here. So we got these. What are the diagnostic criteria for gender dysphoria? Because I have heard it said that transmedicalists don't really read the DSM-5, and they don't really take a look at what the actual criteria are for gender dysphoria. I've also noticed that they confuse gender dysphoria and gender incongruence as well. That's something we should look up first. Difference between gender incongruence and gender dysphoria. Gender identity and gender variation are frequently discussed in today's modern society. Didn't I? Hold on, let me check something here. Check Movid. Okay, there might be something in a Cops Hate Movid that we might check out. Gender incongruence is defined as a condition in which the gender identity of the person does not align with the gender assigned at birth. Persons with gender incongruence who experience significant burdens are in the DSM classification described as gender dysphoria. Gender identity refers to the identification of a person being male, female, neither, or both. And that's from the DSM-5 too, as well. Wait, so the DSM-5 defines gender incongruence? That's super useful. We're going to take a look at that right now. Okay, that's going to take a minute to load because that's a huge document and a very slow server. So we'll just leave that in the background. In this article, we discuss the changes in Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, classification of gender identity related conditions over time, and indicate how these changes were associated with changes in conceptualization. We don't need this. Opposite to the binary approach of being male or female, the concept of gender becomes nowadays accepted as a continuum. Non-binary persons are currently reported in 10% of the persons with gender incongruence. More sources. The prevalence of gender dysphoria in children and adolescents is reported to be 0.6 to 1.7 and depends on the selection of the study cohort, age, and method of investigation. Let's see if that link loaded. Holy crap, that's slow. Okay, we'll just keep going. In recent years, the number of children and adolescents seeking help with GI and GD has increased sharply, and especially in children, not all persons with GI represent symptoms of GD. Okay, that we do actually want a source for. Children with gender dysphoria. In a random sample of 2,730 grade 6 to 8 students from San Francisco in the USA, found that 1.3% of self-identified as transgender in a response to the question, "What is your gender?" with the other responses being female or male. To my knowledge, this is the only random sample of children to which this question has been asked. Yes, I would love citations for self-ID laws passing. That's super important. That's on our list of things to do today. If you have anything for that, I would love it. Hold on. How do I really hate the heart on YouTube chat because I can't click on like the 3 dots that are right underneath it. Hang on a sec. I'm gonna literally zap that element out of there. With uBlock origin. Oh no, I can't. Okay, wait. Okay, we're gonna inspect element that shit. Okay, wait, now I can click on you. Okay, I just made you a moderator with the express purpose of allowing you to post links. No obligation for you to actually do any moderating. It's just so you can share links. I mean, you can moderate if you want to. All right, what are we looking for here? Sex ratio has historically favored predominance of males. No, that's not what we want. In 2012, a random sample of 8,166. Is that different? Yeah, that's a much higher sample size. High school students from New Zealand found that 1.2 answered yes to the question, do you think you are transgender? Which was followed by a definition of the term. Another 2.5% reported that they were not sure about their gender, and 1.7 reported that they did not understand the question. More recently, Eisenberg sampled in 2016 885 high school students in grades 9 and 11 in the states of Minnesota who were asked, do you consider yourself transgender, genderqueer, gender fluid, or unsure about your gender identity? For birth assigned females, 3.6 answered yes to this question, and the corresponding percentage for birth assigned males was 1.7%. That's interesting. Oh god. The transmedicalists are gonna fucking... they're gonna jump with joy at that one because that's going to affirm their pre-existing biases. I'm sure there's some other reason for that, but... they're gonna be like, oh no, it's the she-theys in college. Okay. There's like 100% like an actual reason for that discrepancy, and it's not that, but that's what they're gonna say if they see that. In the parent report, the 1999 standardization, I mean, like for the sake of argument, let's say it is just all the she-theys in college. Also, so what? Like, that's a completely valid gender expression. Like, the idea that that's harming the trans movement, which is the entire basis of Food Shop's contention with like the quote-unquote self-ID model, or trans trenders, as she puts it. I don't know, it's just really dumb. What motivated us to open this again? Where were we? We got turned around. Right, we're looking at the differences between gender incongruence and gender dysphoria. And we had different rates of gender dysphoria and gender incongruence, which we had linked here. In recent years, the number of children with adolescents seeking help with GI and GD increased sharply. Not all persons represent... Okay, that's what we're looking for. We gotta stay focused. Incongruence. Very few mentions, so we should be able to find it. Do we have GI? Is that a thing? Oh yeah, it's gonna be like part of a word though. No, it doesn't seem to be an abbreviation that they use. Dysphoria comes up way more than incongruence. Okay, I don't know if we're going to use anything from this. Finally, the DSM-5 has loaded. And we want to look up their definition for incongruence. Gender dysphoria, as a general descriptive term, refers to the distress that may accompany the incongruence between one's experienced or expressed gender and one's assigned gender. Oh, I think we had that. Gender dysphoria, distress may accompany the incongruence. Okay, so I already had that in there. Oh well. Doesn't help us to refresh our memory. Or it doesn't hurt. However, it is more specifically defined when used as a diagnostic category. It does not refer to distress related to stigma, a distinct, although possibly co-occurring, source of distress. Oh. That's super interesting. So that's saying, like, social dysphoria is not gender dysphoria. So if somebody doesn't experience, like, dysphoria about their body, but they do experience dysphoria about, like, the social role associated with their sex, they might not be able to access transition even though they want it. Like, they might want medical intervention because of social dysphoria, even though they don't experience what is, like, medically considered gender dysphoria. And in this sense, transmedicalism will, like, create a barrier to medical care that they can't access, and they end up having to lie to their doctors in order to access medical care. Okay, yeah, thank you, Envy. Definitely. I'll be looking forward to those links. Take your time. Absolutely. That's really awesome, though. I really appreciate that. Okay, gender dysphoria. I'm gonna put this in my own words. Is not the same as social dysphoria. According to the DSM-5. And then we can quote them. Yeah, no problem, Zoc. This is tough to research this stuff. Gender dysphoria is not the same as social dysphoria. Okay, we're gonna copy our link from here because it's the same link. And that's gonna go back up here. How did I just put that? Gender dysphoria is not the same as social dysphoria. Yeah, I guess I shouldn't phrase it that way, even though that's I'm kind of paraphrasing. Maybe I'll just leave it at their phrasing. It's what I mean by social dysphoria is like dysphoria for like discomfort from the stigma surrounding like the social roles or social elements that are not related to like your body or physical appearance. So like the way that you're treated by others as it relates to your gender category that may not necessarily constitute gender dysphoria, but may still cause like intense social harm to somebody's psyche and cause them to seek transition, even though they feel ambivalent about the actual physical characteristics. But I can just phrase that differently, like in a conversation, so I'll just leave it like that. Okay, so we were looking at the DSM-5. We want to learn more about incongruence. Not all individuals will experience distress from incongruence. Many are distressed if the desired physical interventions using hormones and/or surgery are not available. Gabrielle says, I think the issue here is the distinction between clinically significant and not clinically significant gender dysphoria. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I'm kind of, I'm approaching this from the perspective of arguing against a transmedicalist. I'm not taking issue with like their framing necessarily. Yeah, I don't... It seems like they're drawing a distinction. Maybe I'm mistaken. Let's see. Descriptive term incongruence does not relate to distress related to stigma. So, like, Stigma relating to what? Well, especially when it is on the basis of whether you allow someone to undergo medical care or not. The only concern that I would have with gender dysphoria by itself doesn't prescribe any treatment to my knowledge. Not necessarily. It's like any specific treatment. Yeah, it would be like kind of a case-by-case basis, right? Like that's just a step towards coming to a treatment. Like it depends on the dysphoria, it depends on what the problem is. My only concern with putting barriers up necessarily for care would be people like having to lie to their doctors in order to access care, like particularly in a transmedicalist system, like one that doesn't necessarily follow the most up-to-date guidelines. Gender affirming care is patient-led first and foremost. Yeah, it is. Ideally, everybody would be following that model. And that's the goal. Although not all individuals will experience distress from incongruence, many are distressed if the desired physical interventions using hormones and/or surgery are not available. The current term is more descriptive than the previous DSM-4 gender identity disorder, and focuses on the dysphoria as the clinical problem, not identity per se. Problem is that gender-affirming care is gatekept behind a gender dysphoria diagnosis by insurance companies especially. Yeah, it is. It's really bad. Especially in the US, yeah. There's a documentary I want to watch called Southern Comfort that I have been told is extremely relevant to the research that I'm doing. So I super need to watch that. I've heard it's very sad and very good. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Okay, not all individuals will experience distress from incongruence. I'm just going to add that in here because I feel like that really underscores the point. Wait, no, that's not relevant to that entry. We wanted a separate entry for that. Oh, they might not actually define... They distinguish gender dysphoria from incongruence, but I don't think they outright define it. That's fine, that's good enough, I guess. As long as we have a distinction. Denying someone gender-affirming care causes more pain by itself. Yeah, it does. Regardless if the individual's gender dysphoria persists or deceases at a later date, either the onset of puberty or the realization that puberty will begin with the development of secondary sex characteristics can prompt feelings of gender incongruence that can exacerbate the individual's gender dysphoria. Okay. So we're just going to add it in there. Just as an expansion to the definition. It is an ideology of suffering. I mean, literally, it's an ideology that defines trans as suffering. It's you are not trans if you are not mentally ill. Okay, so what was next on our itinerary? We've got the difference between gender dysphoria and gender incongruence. We wanted to look at the diagnostic criteria. And to do that, we had a page number from a debate that I just watched. Which one was it? It was either this one or it was this one. I think it was the Big Papa Fascist debate. Okay, so we're just gonna jump to this and just listen for a minute just to see if we can find the page number.
Do you want me to send you this, or do you?
Yeah, you can pop it right in the private chat, and I'll take a look at it.
I'm gonna get the page number for you in just a second. I just have to find it. So here's a copy of the DSM. We go
Right, as you put that up, just letting you know, 15 minutes left. Then we're at hour 15. We're gonna have closing statements, and then we'll go into.
Oh, this is Goddammit Malcolm, by the way. Excellent YouTuber. Link in the chat.
The Q&A.
Gotcha.
Dope. All right.
They're arguing against transmedicalism, and Big Papa Fascist is arguing in favor of transmedicalism. Which is weird. I mean, I knew he was a transphobe, but I didn't know he was a transmedicalist. I feel like he'll adopt any position just to, like, trigger whoever his opponent is. I'm not sure. He's a wild card. I have no idea what's going on in his head.
So the criteria for adolescents and adult is a marked incongruence between one's experience and expressed gender and primary and secondary sex characteristics. 2, a strong desire to be
You
rid of
literally
one's...
sent me the entire DSM file.
Yeah, so
Where
if
is
you
it?
go to page 479, or 497, excuse me, and it's gender dysphoria, adolescents and adults.
It was 487?
Or 497, excuse me.
497. Okay, here we go. We got it. 511. Okay, here's the page numbers. All right. 493. Diagnostic markers. Okay, here we go. It's a good debate. I recommend it. I mean, it's cancer because it's BPF, but yeah, it's more BPF. Honestly, when I was searching transmedicalism, and I was really surprised to see him there. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to come from him. It's really weird. It's a good debate. Like, I think that there are some really good arguments coming from Malcolm in that. It is cancer because it's BPF, but if you're interested in anti-transmed arguments, I would recommend it anyway. Okay. 497. Gender, sex-related diagnostic issues, diagnostic markers. Here we go. Validated psychological measures of criterion A2 symptoms. Marked vulvo-vaginal or pelvic pain. Is this right? Can be assessed in real time. No, this is not correct. Gendered social constructions relating to womanhood and or femininity are implicated in the experience of... No, this isn't it either. I don't think... Okay, so with BPF, I don't think he's arguing, like, from a genuine position. Like many fascists, I think he'll wear whatever mask he needs to wear to, like, win an argument or to like, from his perspective, humiliate his opponent. I think it's facetious or disingenuous. I don't think he believes anything. Okay, what do I get if I search for diagnostic? How many numbers do I have to search through? That's way too many. I'm not going through all that.
And it's gender dysphoria, adolescents, and adults. One, a marked incongruence between one's experience and expressed gender and primary and secondary sex characteristics.
Okay. Primary and secondary. Can we find that? Let's let it catch up. Oh, we found it. Gabrielle says, in my mind, any attempts to look at transgenderism from a medical perspective all more or less miss the mark. I agree with that. I think the reason that they miss the mark is because they're medicalizing and pathologizing something that is that is philosophical. It has to do with like internal identity. It has nothing to do with, at least not inherently, a medical condition. It's like when they tried to medicalize gay people, which is something they did, and led to very similar results as trying to medicalize trans people as a category. Diagnostic criteria, gender dysphoria in children. And there are two different sets of criteria for adults and children. A marked incongruence between one's experienced and expressed gender and assigned gender of at least 6 months duration, as manifested by at least 6 of the following, one of which must be criterion A1. A strong desire to be of the other gender, or an insistence that one is the other gender. or some alternative gender different from one's assigned gender. In boys, assigned gender, a strong preference for cross-dressing or simulating female attire, or in girls, assigned gender, a strong preference for the wearing of only typical masculine clothing, and a strong resistance to the wearing of typical feminine clothing. A strong preference for cross-gender roles in make-believe play or fantasy play. A strong preference for the toys, games, or activities stereotypically used or engaged in by the other gender. A strong preference for playmates of the other gender. In boys assigned gender, a strong rejection of typically masculine toys, games, and activities, a strong avoidance of rough and tumble play. Or in girls assigned gender, a strong rejection of typically feminine toys, games, and activities. A strong dislike of one's sexual autonomy. A strong desire to be for the primary and or secondary sex characteristics that match one's experienced gender. The condition that is associated with clinically significant distress or impairment in the social, school, or other important areas of functioning. Specify if, with a disorder/difference of sex development, e.g. a congenital androgenital disorder such as E25.0 congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or E34.50 androgen insensitivity syndrome. Coding note: code or the disorder difference of sex development as well as gender dysphoria. Okay, so now we have adolescents and adults. A marked incongruence between one's experienced expressed gender and assigned gender of at least 6 months duration as manifested by at least two of the following. A marked incongruence between one's experienced and expressed gender and primary and or secondary sex characteristics, or in young adolescents, the anticipated secondary sex characteristics. A strong desire to be rid of one's primary and or secondary sex characteristics because of a marked incongruence with one's experienced/expressed gender. A strong desire for the primary and or secondary sex characteristics of the other gender. A strong desire to be of the other gender. A strong desire to be treated as the other gender. A strong conviction that one has the typical feelings and reactions of the other gender. The condition is associated with clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Specify if, with a social disorder/difference of sex development. Coding note: code the disorder difference of sex development as well as gender dysphoria. Yeah, this is the DSM-5. Post-transition. The individual has transitioned to full-time living in the experienced gender, with or without legalization of gender change, and has undergone, or is preparing to have, at least gender-affirming medical procedure or treatment regimen, namely regular gender-affirming hormone treatment or gender reassignment surgery confirming the experienced gender. Okay. Yeah, I guess this is exactly what I expected. I'm not sure what I was expecting to find. But it's good that we went over it anyway. What else did we have here? We wanted to look for historical and anthropological evidence for social transition, because that was something else that came up in the food shops debate that we listened to. Cops Hate Mo also talks about it in their video, and like I'm also just I've been generally aware of that, like the history of like trans people throughout different cultures and civilizations. But that came as a surprise to food shops in that debate, so I feel like it might be useful to have something to point to. Psychology does miss the mark. This is all BS, but it's the basis of how psychology works. It assumes that gender is a real thing. There's a clear distinction between trans and non-trans. Yeah, I agree with that. I think everybody has a gender identity, and everybody's like constantly constructing their gender identity, whether they realize it or not. And also, gender is a fuck. Anthropology, social change. Is this what we want? No, I don't think so. Yeah, this is what we want. Yeah, it's kind of, it's applying like a modern conception of gender and transgender to historical context that may or may not fit. However, whether or not gender existed then the way it does now in different societies, I think that it's, for the sake of the argument that we're going to be participating in, I think that it's a close enough parallel that we can say that, like, there are things that we can point to in history that suggest that being trans isn't like some new thing that was just invented in the 1900s. It isn't something that just like sprung up because of like the Industrial Revolution that we just cooked up in a lab, and that it's maybe like something more something that's maybe a little bit more essential to the human experience of just the way we interact and the way that we form social categories as just like a basis of our interaction, at least historically speaking. And maybe it doesn't have to be that way, you know? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a gender abolitionist. But deconstruction gender, yeah. I'm not going to get into gender abolition in that conversation because that's a whole can of worms, especially with the audience that I'm approaching. So, you know, I'm gonna be picking my battles. Okay, thanks, Envy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Alright, so let's take a look at this. This is long. No, we're not going to look at the whole thing. Accounts of trans... Because I can just point at the article if I want to. Accounts of transgender people, including non-binary and third-gender people, have been identified going back to ancient times in cultures worldwide. The modern terms and meanings of transgender, gender identity, gender role only emerged in the 1950s and 60s. As a result, opinions may vary on how to categorize historical accounts of gender-variant people and identities. By deconstructing gender, I mean problematizing the claims that gender makes about the world. Yeah, just like a critical look at like what gender means and whether it's useful as a category to begin with, and the way that we interact with it and define it. I think I understand where you're coming from. I'm not sure that would be a useful approach for this audience, but I definitely understand where you're coming from, or I think I do. I have not read Butler yet. Judith Butler is on my list. I really want to read her. I know of Judith Butler, and I know like the kind of gist of gender trouble. At least if summaries are to be trusted. I never trust summaries, though. The ancient Greek, Phrygian, and Roman eunuch priests of Galli order have been interpreted by some scholars as transgender or third gender. The transfeminine Kathoi and Hijra genders have persisted for thousands of years in Thailand and in the Indian subcontinent, respectively. In Arabia, Hanith, like earlier, I am not pronouncing that, have occupied a third gender role, attested since the 7th century CE. Traditional roles for transgender women and transgender men have existed in many African societies, with some persisting to the modern day. Oh, them. Okay. North American indigenous fluid and third gender roles, including the Navajo Nadlihi and Zuni Ihamana, have existed since pre-colonial times. I'm going to butcher so many pronunciations, oh my god. Butler goes by they, them. Okay. Good to know. Some medieval European documents have been studied as possible accounts of transgender persons. Kalonymus ben Kalonymus's lament for being born a man instead of a woman has been seen as an early account of gender dysphoria. John Eleanor Reichiner, a male-bodied Briton arrested in 1394 while living and doing sex work dressed as a woman, has been interpreted by some contemporary scholars as transgender. In Japan, accounts of transgender people go back to the Edo period. In Indonesia, there are millions of trans third-gender waria, and the extant pre-Islamic Bugis Society of Sulawesi recognizes 5 gender roles. Is that a link? All 5 genders must coexist harmoniously. Interesting. Okay. In the United States, in 1776, the genderless public universal friend refused both birth name and gendered pronouns, the first known informal transgender advocacy organization in the United States. Circle Hermaphroditos was founded in 1895. That's interesting. A lot of third genders were in fact descriptions of what we know today as DIDs. Okay. An American preacher born in Cumberland, Rhode Island, to Quaker parents. After suffering a severe illness in 1776, the friend claimed to have died and been reanimated as a genderless evangelist named the Public Universal Friend. That's where you can get caught by transphobes. That's good to know. Thank you for that. And afterward, shunned both birth name and gendered pronouns. In androgynous clothes, the friend preached throughout the northeastern United States, attracting many followers who became the Society of Universal Friends. The Friends' theology was broadly similar to that of most Quakers. The Friends stressed free will opposed to slavery and supported sexual abstinence. The most committed members of Society of Universal Friends were a group of unmarried women who took leading roles in their households and community. In the 1790s, members of the society acquired land in western New York, where they formed the town of Jerusalem near Penn-Yan, New York. The Society of Universal Friends ceased to exist by the 1860s. Many writers have portrayed the Friend as a woman, and of either a manipulative fraudster or a pioneer for women's rights. Others have viewed the Friend as transgender or non-binary and a figure in trans history. Interesting. The Circle Hermaphroditos was the first known informal transgender advocacy organization in the United States to unite for the defense against the world's bitter persecution. The group first met at Pereses Hall, also called Columbia Hall or simply the Hall, which was a center of homosexual nightlife in New York City. There, male sex workers would solicit men under an effeminate persona. In a time when cross-dressing was socially unacceptable and a punishable crime, places like the Pereses Hall provided a place where self-described, instinctive female impersonators, androgynes, queens, fairies, or Uranians could gather and feel more free to express themselves and socialize with similar people. These were Victorian era and Edwardian era words, with their own nuances of meaning. For people who were born male, they felt they were at least partly woman in mind or spirit, and preferred having sex with men. People who today might call themselves transgender women, non-binary people, or feminine gay men in the language of today's LGBT communities. The nature of Pereses Hall during this period is known to historians today as from a variety of sources. However, the Circle Hermaphroditos is more apocryphal, known chiefly from the autobiography of an instinctive female impersonator, Jenny June, who provides the main surviving description of it. June says all the group's members knew one another only by pseudonyms for reasons of safety. The group was led by pseudonyms Roland Reeves. Little evidence of the Circle's existence is known to survive today. It's sad. That's a shame. Yeah, they're just accounts, yeah. Well, we can certainly say that there is, a lot of anthropological evidence that there were not strict gender roles as we know them today. That gender as like a binary as we understand man and woman to be right here and now in the West is not something that has existed throughout all of history. I think certainly we know enough to say that. This is something that I probably won't be able to cover in one research stream. I think this is something I would have to look way more deeply into. And I don't think that I would find anything conclusive. However, I am just as a general field of inquiry, I am super interested in prehistory and stuff like that. So I might be looking more into this in the future. I think the best that I can do is just kind of vaguely gesture at this article, though. I don't know if I'm going to be able to dive too deep into this. Yeah, that's true. Things we don't see as problematic today may have been seen as defamatory at the time and thus not reliable accounts. Yeah, we might take something as like as a straightforward account, and it might have actually been like some kind of defamatory claim or propaganda or something, and we're just taking it out of context. That's very possible. There's this book that I read called The Plato Papers by Peter Ackroyd, and it's basically about Plato in the future, like thousands of years in the future, and he's looking at he's like uncovering evidence from our time and speculating on like, oh, what is this record player, what are these books, what are the meanings of all of these things that we're uncovering, and trying to extrapolate how we lived our lives based on these like partial artifacts from our time. And it's just really funny the ways that people can get things wrong based on like little pieces of evidence. It's a really interesting thought experiment. That was The Plato Papers. It's a really good book. Okay, so I don't think there's anything really here for us with that. The last thing that we can do is take a look at the Vosh research document. And this is more for transphobes, which, to be fair, transmedicalists are transphobes. But you don't necessarily use all of the same arguments against them. But we can take a look anyway. Maybe there's something we can pick off of this. American Psychological Association pamphlet expands on the premises listed. Total equality, yeah. A lot of these are just saying trans rights, and a lot of trans meds will agree with the trans rights thing. It's just trans rights for me and not for thee. So some of these aren't going to be useful to us. Human Rights Campaign document published with American Academy of Pediatrics. Affirms the validity of transgender youth. Yeah, we don't need that. Affirms the validity of trans people. We don't need that. Social stigma is a serious cause of harm. Okay. So my argument against food shops is going to be that policing people who are quote-unquote transgenders is going to create an environment where you stigmatize gender nonconformity, and that kind of stigmatization will create harm to trans people. However, I don't think I'll need to substantiate the claim that stigmatization causes harm. I think I'll need to substantiate the claim that she's creating the stigmatization in the first place. She'll probably contest that. So I don't think I need this. WHO recently stopped classifying transness as a mental disorder. That can be useful. Uh-oh. We will be looking at the Wayback Machine again. Here we go. The primary purpose of this Memorandum of the Understanding MOU is the protection of the public through a commitment to ending the practice of conversion therapy in the UK. For the purposes of this document, conversion therapy is an umbrella term for therapeutic approach. Document supports therapists to provide appropriately informed and ethical practice when working with clients who wishes to explore, experience conflict, or is in distress regarding their sexual orientation or gender identity. What are we looking for again? Mental disorder. Okay. That's useful. That's gonna go in the top. Under consensus and scientific organizations. World Health Organization. Oops. Pretty hard to argue against someone's feelings of insecurity that they project to society at large. A lot of arguing involves being someone's therapist. Like, why do you care that there are people who you consider transgenders? Does that make you feel more secure about your transgender status? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I imagine it does make them feel more secure. It's all a matter of, like, I've climbed up the ladder, I'd like to kick it down beneath me. Gender transition has a positive effect. We don't need that. We know that. I don't think that'll be contested. Sex is complicated, not a binary. I don't think that'll come up. It might, but I don't know if I need that to make any arguments. Queer people are still oppressed. I don't think we need that either. Okay. So yeah, that's more for, like, straight conservatives, not transmedicalists. It's a different kind of research document. Okay, so this is our itinerary for next time. I guess we can take a brief look at these last few here. So this is a book. The Lives of Transgender People. Responding to a critical need for greater perspectives on transgender life in the United States. Groundbreaking survey of one of the largest ever conducted U.S. on gender development and identity making among transsexual women, transsexual men, cross-dressers, genderqueer individuals with nearly 3,500 participants. The survey is remarkably diverse, and with more than 400 follow-up interviews, the data offers limitless opportunities for research and interpretation. Interesting. That's really interesting. I want this. I'm gonna see if I can find this book real quick. Hold on. Nope, I can't. Wait, no, I've got some other sources. Okay, we found it. How many pages is this? That's actually pretty short. Will I get in trouble for reading this on stream? Maybe. Okay, I'm just bookmarking this. It's pretty easy to find. If you Google it, you can find it. I don't think I'll be reading it on stream, because I think it's copyrighted. What is this? Family rejection as a predictor of negative health outcomes. We examined specific family rejecting reactions to sexual orientation and gender expression. Quantitative scales to assess retrospectively in young adults the frequency of parental and caregiver reactions to a lesbian, gay, or bisexual sexual orientation during adolescence. 9 negative health indicators, including mental health, substance abuse, and sexual risk. 224 white Latino self-identified lesbian, gay, and bisexual young adults, 21 to 25. Higher rates of family rejection were significantly associated with poorer health outcomes. On the basis of odds ratios, lesbian, gay, bisexual young adults who reported higher levels of family rejection during adolescence were 8.4 times more likely to report having attempted suicide, 5.9 times more likely to report high levels of depression, 3.4 times more likely to use illegal drugs, 3.4 times more likely to report having engaged in unprotected sexual intercourse, compared with peers from families that reported no or low levels of family rejection. Latino men reported the highest number of negative family reactions to their sexual orientation in adolescence. This study establishes a clear link between specific parental and caregiver rejecting behaviors and negative health problems in young lesbian and gay bisexual adults. Oh, thank you, Envy. I'm going to take a look at those links right now. Alright, let's take a look at those. Can I use this? Is this useful to us? This family rejection thing? I think we'll keep it in here. We're gonna say... We're gonna put it in the bottom here. Family rejection of gender expression leads to negative health outcomes. Okay. Alright, so now we're checking links about self-ID laws. These are super useful because the transmedicalist argument is that self-ID is dangerous and it holds back the trans community. It stands in the way of trans rights and it's not politically viable. So the more examples of self-ID laws passing that we can get, the stronger an argument we have. That's my perspective, at least. Yeah, 4's good for now. Thing is, trans meds ignore the fact that trans people suffer. They'll selectively ignore it. They'll acknowledge it when it's convenient and then ignore it when it's not. But you can like drag them up to it and hold their nose in it if you have to. Okay, Victorian law allows people born in Victoria to change the record of sex on their birth certificate. Okay. We're gonna create a new section. Self-ID laws. Work in progress. Oh, that wasn't your point? I apologize. I'm not sure because the thing with trans meds isn't that they ignore the fact that trans people suffer. Oh, okay. It's more about who deserves to have their suffering recognized as being the true trans. Oh, okay. Yeah, I did misread. Yeah, they don't necessarily ignore that trans people suffer, although it really depends on what trans people, yeah. Okay, so we've got we can format these later. And I will probably, at a later date, I'll probably find news articles referring to these specific laws, just for convenience. But this is a great place to start. And thank you very much for linking these, Envy. Okay, so that's a work in progress. I might add to this off stream. Yeah, it's the Celeste soundtrack. Okay, so we got that. What is this? Sexual orientation change efforts. Includes a range of techniques. The game that proves I can double jump. True! I should play more Celeste. I bought an arcade stick to play it with, and it's really challenging, but it's really fun. I really like playing with a stick. I have far fewer missed inputs, like when I'm trying to do the diagonal dashes or like a wave dash, like a reverse wave dash. It's so much easier when I'm using the fight stick rather than trying to use like a DualShock 4. Is there anything we need in here? I don't even remember the context that I pasted this link with. I should have written that down. I'm gonna have to read this later. Okay, will do, Envy. I guess we'll just read the intro. Sexual orientation is a multidimensional aspect of human experience comprised of gendered patterns in attraction and behavior, identity related to these patterns. Attraction is conceptualized both romantic and sexual. Individuals of same gender, multiple gender attractions and behaviors have been stigmatized. Heterosexism and monosexism are social stigmas and societal inequalities that denigrate, discredit, disadvantage those with same-sex, multiple gender attractions, behaviors, and associated identities. Because of social stigma, they experience individuals with same and multiple gender attractions and behaviors may be referred to collectively as sexual minorities. SOCE. Refer to a wide variety of efforts. Have taken a variety of forms such as one-on-one meetings, drop-in groups, non-scientific explanations of sexual orientation, claims that sexual attraction can be changed through psychotherapeutic treatment, inaccurate information. Okay, so this is like conversion therapy shit. Good night, Envy. Focus on white cisgender individuals and sexual orientation may also make less visible impacts of SOCE on communities of color. Alright, this seems to be talking about why conversion therapy is bad. If I'm explaining to somebody why conversion therapy is bad, then I've already lost. Like, that's not a transmedicalism argument at that point. Okay, we looked at that. And I don't think we can watch this on stream. Can we? Probably not. Who is this? Just a random uploader? Well, there doesn't appear to be like a copyright claim on it. Better safe than sorry. I probably shouldn't watch it. Okay. Alright, I think that's all for tonight. I think we're done. For now. We might revisit this again. We might do another research stream, or I might just finish this off stream. Yeah, I think we're done. I mean, I feel like what they propose to people who are not quite trans enough to their taste can be similar to conversion therapy. It is, yeah, it is. I would argue that transmedicalism as an ideology naturally leads to conversion therapy. Just in the social environment that it creates, if nothing else. Especially in the kind of stigmatization that it produces towards gender non-conforming people. Alright, chat, so how are we feeling? Do we end stream? Or do we play a little bit of Doom? How are you all feeling? Okay. Alright, well, I've got work pretty early, so maybe I'll wrap it up for the night, and then we'll play some Doom in a future stream. Yeah. Okay, well, I hope you have a good night, chat. And you, Gabrielle, I hope you have a good night. Thank you for hanging out. Good night, everyone. Okay, we'll do, Estelle.